This video is really going to tick the Canadian prepper off. But come with me as we learn how you can reverse type 2 diabetes without exercise or starving. But first, the channel intro. So the last thing that you want to do is to have SHTF happen and for you to be dependent on insulin or any other medication to keep you alive. So today I'm going to show how I reversed becoming type 2 diabetic myself, and I'm also going to show how thousands of other people are doing the same thing. Here is something that I discovered, that thousands of people, when they were told that they were diabetic from their doctors, that after they made a few simple changes to their lifestyle, that their doctors actually told them that their blood sugar was back into the normal range and their doctors were able to take them off their insulin or whatever other medication they were on for their diabetes. Now folks, first of all, I am not a lean, mean, fighting, killing operator. I'm just a middle-aged man that let himself get overweight, and I started paying the consequences for it. And then second, there are two types of diabetes out there. There's type 1 diabetes, where at the time of this video there is no cure, and pretty much once you have it, you have it. And then there is type 2 diabetes, which is what 95% of the diabetics out there have. And I have seen example after example where type 2 diabetes can be reversed. And I mean reversed to the point that you no longer need insulin. And that is important, because if SHTF happens, then you don't want to be dependent on a medication to keep you alive, especially when medications may no longer be available. So let me tell you what I've been doing to turn myself away from diabetes and getting my blood sugar back to its normal range. So up through my late 30s, I was pretty active. I ran a lot of marathons, and I did a lot of those punishing obstacle courses, and I played a lot of sports. And then I hit my 40s. I got married, and I also got busy with my career, and all that exercise I was getting also went to the wayside. And then it also became more convenient to eat fast food, and with that came the weight gain. And then I went to my doctor, who then told me I was becoming dangerously close to becoming pre-type 2 diabetes, and she said I was just about to tip over to the point to needing medication. And this was like a punch in the face to me. I had never been on medication before, and now I felt old. So I began packing my lunch and eating better, because I correlated my weight gain with high blood sugar. What I noticed was that when I was fat, I had high blood sugar, and then when I wasn't fat, then I did not have high blood sugar. And that is what I believe is to be the cause of the majority of diabetics in today's society. They have poor diets, and with the weight gain comes the diabetes and the high blood sugar. So for several years, I packed my lunch, took my lunch to work, and I was eating better, and I got better. But then a couple of years ago, I went to a new police department, and instead of packing my lunch, I had made the decision that for a couple of months that I would eat lunch with my new coworkers as I got to know them better, that I would actually go out to eat with them to get to know them better. But the problem with these new coworkers was that these guys didn't go to just normal restaurants. These guys went to sit-down type of restaurants that had actual servers. That, you know, the type of restaurants that when you leave out of there after your meal that you feel gorged and stuffed. Now, I had originally only intended to eat lunch with the new coworkers just for a couple of months in this getting to know them better time period. But that couple of months ended up turning into a couple of years and a weight gain of 30 pounds. And before I had went to this new police department, back when I was still packing my lunch for work that day, what me and my wife would do is we would fix extra of a healthy dinner, and then that extra food that was left over would go towards my healthy lunch that I would pack to take to work that next day. But since I was now eating out with my new coworkers, then it suddenly wasn't so important to fix a healthy dinner to have a healthy lunch for the next day. So then suddenly a healthy dinner no longer became so important. And then suddenly it became more convenient to have fast food or restaurant food for dinner at night also. So just to sum it up so that we can keep moving, in 2 years I had gained 30 pounds. And it had always kept in the back of my mind of how dangerously high my blood sugar levels was when I was heavier, and then how now here I was back to being heavy again. And then the real kicker for me was last summer I shot some footage of me at the firing range for a video for YouTube, and then I saw how heavy, when I saw myself in the video, I saw how heavy I had let myself become again. And then I saw how much of my stomach was hanging out over my duty belt. So after range that day, I went home and weighed myself, and that's when I saw that I had put on 30 pounds since coming to the new police department. I was now at 230 pounds. So I knew what I needed to do, and that was take that 30 pounds off and actually just a little bit more. First, I don't want to be that fat cop. I mean, everybody else on my department is pretty trim. Now, they're younger than me, so they can kind of eat whatever they want and still not gain weight yet. But I also want to keep myself in halfway decent shape in case the grid goes down. I just don't want to be dependent on any kind of medication to keep me alive should SHTF happen and medication is no longer available. And finally, I have a young family while I am almost 50 years old. My wife is almost 20 years younger than me. I have a 4-year-old son, and we are hoping to have another child. So I need to take care of myself, so I am not leaving her a widow anytime sooner than what I already will. Plus, I do not want to leave young children fatherless. And as a police officer, I get dispatched all the time to men that are in their 50s and early 60s that just suddenly drop dead of heart attacks and other elements like that, but that are usually brought on by being overweight and complications from diabetes. So I do regularly see how our eating habits directly affects our health and our longevity. But here are the tips that I did that really kickstarted my weight loss and got me feeling so much better, and that have also lowered my blood sugar back out of the pre-diabetic range and back down to the normal healthy range. But first, the usual YouTube disclaimer. I am not a doctor, nor am I a dietitian. I am just simply telling you what worked great, what has and is working great for me. And I am not telling you what you should do, but just giving you information so that you can make your own informed decision. But the very first thing that I did was I went out and I bought one of those blood sugar or blood glucose monitoring machines like you see diabetes use when they poke their fingers and get the blood out that they test. And I did notice when I was 30 pounds heavier, when I very first started trying to lose weight again, I did notice that the first time that I tested myself with that machine, that I was back to being really close and to tipping into pre-diabetic again, and where the doctor would put me on medication. Now, while these blood sugar monitors aren't exact, they do give you a pretty good idea of how foods that you eat, how those foods will affect your blood sugar. And this is important because I found that the same foods that raised my blood sugar also made me gain weight. And I found that foods that did not spike my blood sugar would make me lose weight. So let me reiterate that. Foods that did not raise my blood sugar were the same foods that would make me lose weight. So needless to say, this blood sugar monitor helped me out tons by telling me which foods I should eat and which foods I should not eat. And then, even though I technically wasn't a pre-type 2 diabetic yet, again, remember, I was on the verge of tipping over into pre-type 2 diabetes, but even though I wasn't technically diabetic yet, I still went ahead and got online and watched videos and read articles on foods that people with diabetes should eat. And what I found was that breads and pastas and rice and sugary drinks and even some vegetables and fruits would spike my blood sugar, or spike your blood sugar, which then over time makes your body insulin resistant, and that causes type 2 diabetes. And again, I also found that many of these same foods that spike your blood sugar also makes you gain weight. So the first dietary change that I made was cutting out all sugary drinks. Instead of drinking a Coca-Cola or a Dr. Pepper with my dinner, I would drink a Dr. Zevia because it's flavored, or I'm sorry, it is sweetened with the stevia plant, which is supposed to be a more natural sugar substitute and supposed to be even healthier for you than some of the other sugar substitutes that are out there on the market. And then for having something to drink that I can sip throughout the day, I make a home brewed berry flavored green tea because green tea is supposed to be good for you, plus this is sugar free and calorie free, and green tea is supposed to have a bunch of other benefits for you also. And I also cut out like 90% of bread out of my diet. And before you click off of this video saying that you can never do that because you love bread so much, just stick with me just for a second here. Because what I would like for you to try, is just to cut all bread out of your diet for a couple of weeks, just to see how much better you will probably feel. Trust me, I love bread too. I love breadsticks and a really big submarine sandwich and a pizza with a really thick crust. But what I noticed was that the less bread, the less wheat products, whether it's spaghetti or macaroni and cheese or what have you, but the less bread and wheat products that I ate, the better that I felt and the more weight that I lost. And it's now actually gotten to the point where I prefer this good feeling and my weight loss, but I prefer this over the taste of the bread and the wheat products and the sluggish feeling that the bread and wheat products gives me. Now don't get me wrong, I still occasionally, once in a while, will enjoy a little bit of bread. I still enjoy milling down my own wheat here at home and making a loaf of homemade bread, but that is once in a while now, and maybe once a week or maybe twice a month I will have a hamburger on a 100% whole wheat bun. But again, the amount of bread that I eat now is a fraction of the bread that I ate in the past. But now I pretty much replace bread mostly with these low-carb tortilla shells. Instead of having a regular sandwich, I will place whatever I would have eaten in that sandwich into one of these low-carb shells, wrap it up, and eat it like that. Because again, what I found is the more carbs that you eat, the more that it spikes your blood sugar, and also the more weight that it puts on your body, and the more it makes you become insulin resistant and inches you or puts you into being a type 2 diabetic. Now, I don't want to totally deprive myself of good food. The way I pretty much play it is on regular days throughout the week, I eat healthy. I really cut out my carbs and I eat good. But then holidays like July 4th and Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving, on those big holidays like that, I eat whatever I want on that day, and then the day after I get back to eating like I normally do. My way of eating, my diet, my way of eating. And I also usually have one cheat meal a week, usually a weekend night. And this is just to help keep me from getting into a rut with the foods that I eat the rest of the 90% of my diet, my way of eating. And folks, the information in this video is very important because I've heard story after story of folks that were actually full on type 2 diabetes. Not getting close to diabetes like I was, but actually full on type 2 diabetic where they were actually on insulin. And then when they cut the carbs out of their diets, then they actually reversed their type 2 diabetes and their doctors were able to take them off of the insulin. And let me repeat that. When these type 2 diabetics cut carbs out of their diet, and I'm talking diabetics that had A1Cs of 10 or higher, but when these type 2 diabetics cut the carbs out of their diet, they lowered their A1Cs back down into the low 5s, and their doctors told them that their blood sugar levels were back to normal, and their doctors were able to take them off of their medication. And another dietary change that I made was I cut out all white potatoes and sweet potatoes out of my diet, pretty much. Now I know that many of you hear that sweet potatoes are better for you than white potatoes, but I think that if you buy one of those glucose readers and you test yourself after you eat a white potato and you test yourself after you eat a sweet potato, I think that you will find that they will both spike your blood sugar pretty close to the same. And a favorite snack of mine now is a personal pizza that I make using those low-carb tortilla shells. And this is something that I saw on the Beat Diabetes YouTube channel. But to make this, you just simply lay down a shell, then you just use a little bit of mozzarella cheese as a binder to help stick the second shell to the first shell. Then you lay down your second shell. Then you just put down a little bit of pizza sauce. Then you add your cheese and other low-carb toppings, and then you pop it in your oven just for about 12 minutes at 400 degrees, and then boom, you've got this nice little personal pan pizza that I think tastes pretty darn good, and also this won't hardly spike your blood sugar at all. And pasta. I really love pasta, but unfortunately pasta shoots your blood sugar through the roof and also makes you fat. Even 100% whole wheat pasta. So in my research for foods that were better for diabetics, I found pasta that was made from beans and lentils, and surprisingly, I like them. Now this is just something that you will have to test out for yourself, because I have found some pasta made from beans and lentils. I have found some of them to have some pretty weird texture and not such great taste. But then I have found some that I can't tell the difference between that pasta and the pasta made from wheat products, what you're normally used to. So if I'm feeling like spaghetti that night for dinner, I will use pasta made from the beans and lentils rather than pasta that's made from wheat. And then as a side dish, I really enjoy this fake macaroni and cheese that I make from this beans and lentil pasta. And to make this, the first thing that I'll do is I will cook up the pasta, and then I'll add some coconut cream for a good fat, plus I'll put in a little bit of pink Himalayan salt, and then I'll add some nutritional yeast, because nutritional yeast has kind of a cheesy flavor to it. And then boom, you've got a macaroni side dish that's made out of some pretty healthy ingredients. And for breakfast, almost every day I eat eggs, because eggs really fill me up. They really give me good energy, and they have absolutely no effect on my blood sugar at all. And I usually poach them instead of frying them to cut down on the oil, and I don't eat just regular grocery store eggs either. I eat pasture-raised eggs, and they can be bought at the grocery store, but they are supposed to be higher in the good cholesterol and lower in the bad cholesterol compared to the standard eggs that you usually get in the grocery store. My point here is I don't want to eat something that's going to be good for my blood sugar, but then it's going to be bad for my heart and then just give me a heart attack a couple years down the road. And for meat with our meals, we eat chicken almost every night, cooked just about in every way except for fried. And we'll also eat a healthy fish from time to time, and we'll usually have steak, usually about once a week as a treat, but most nights it's some type of a chicken that's cooked in a healthy manner. And for side dishes, we stay away from mashed potatoes and macaroni and cheese and other fattening dishes like that, and we stick with vegetables. And then if the vegetables aren't cooked with our meat to give them flavoring like that, then we'll roast them with some different seasonings to make them taste good. And I also try to get healthy fats into my meals, into my way of eating, my diet. I snack on nuts that haven't been roasted with some kind of unhealthy vegetable oil and that's not also been loaded with salt. And I also try to eat avocados when possible. And if something that we're cooking, if that is cream based, then we will try to use coconut cream instead of the normal dairy cream. And as much as I love a good steak, sorry Hupel's cat.
Oh no!
Oh no!
What are you doing, EP? What are you doing? Plan strong.
No meat.
Bye.
But as much as I like a good steak, I have to limit my intake of them because I am not rich enough to afford the more expensive grass-fed beef that is usually higher in your good cholesterol again and then lower in your bad cholesterol. Now I have looked into the ketogenic diet or the keto diet, and that is a really strict low carb or almost no carb way of eating. But that diet, that way of eating is a little too strict for me. Under the keto diet, you cannot eat most beans nor most fruits. But if I were really overweight, I'm talking like 100 pounds overweight or something like that, then I probably would look into the keto diet, because that way of eating will really melt the pounds off of you, and really from what I've seen, it really has helped a lot of diabetics get their blood sugar levels back down to the normal readings. And then I've also heard of people doing intermittent fasting, both with the keto diet and then also another way of eating for some people, which is called the carnivore diet. And if you're not familiar with the carnivore diet, it's where people eat only meat and, you know, usually grass-fed meat. And then, but what they will do is they will eat one big meal a day of nothing but meat, maybe butter on it from grass-fed cows, but they'll eat that one big meal a day and then not eat the rest of the day. Now, I've also cut rice out of my diet because rice is really carb heavy. Yes, even including brown rice and wild rice and long grain rice. But what I've replaced it with is cauliflower rice, or riced cauliflower. But basically what it is it's cauliflower that's crumbled down into small little pieces that once it's crumbled down it looks like rice. And once you cook it, it really has a lot of the same texture as rice. And as much as a meat and potato guy that I actually am, I actually enjoy this cauliflower rice. In most dishes that's cooked with this, I can't tell the difference between that and the normal rice. And then just for convenience, we buy it already crumbled. Now I know that right now some of you are saying, hey, but ethical, as a prepper, I bet you've got hundreds of pounds of rice put into long-term storage. What are you going to do if you cannot or will not eat rice and SHTF happens and you have to start relying on that long-term storage rice that you got? And that is a fair question, but my thoughts on that is if SHTF happens and we actually have to start breaking into the long-term storage foods and eating rice and beans and stuff like that, but if we have to start eating that rice, we will probably also be doing a lot more manual labor where we will be burning those carbohydrates off. We'll be burning those where they'll get burnt off and they will not be getting put onto our stomach as fat, and then again doing the insulin resistance thing. So if you're following along here, what I've done is I've bought a blood sugar reader and then started testing myself to see what foods were spiking my blood sugar and what foods were not spiking my blood sugar, which then told me what foods to eat and what foods not to eat. And when it told me that foods like bread and pasta and rice and other carb heavy foods was spiking my blood sugar, and I quit eating those, and I also lost the weight. And my blood sugar started returning back to normal. Now, you don't need to test yourself after every single meal that you eat. When you find a recipe that you like, test yourself the first 2 or 3 times after you eat that new recipe. And then if each test shows that you're staying in normal blood sugar ranges, then it's probably safe to not have to test yourself after you eat that meal. The way that I kind of play it is that when I try a new recipe, that's when I test myself. And if that recipe makes my blood sugar go too high, I'd like to keep my blood sugar after a meal, an hour, hour and a half after I eat my meal. I like to make sure that my blood sugar stays at 140 or below after that meal. So if a meal makes me go 140 or above, I don't eat that meal again. If it's below 140, then I know that's a pretty safe meal for me to continue eating, to put into my diet, my way of eating. And in the video footage that you're seeing here, I filmed myself at the range recently so that I could compare this range footage to the range footage that I took last summer that made me realize that I had gotten too fat again. And unfortunately, I didn't get the camera at the exact same angle to do an exact side-by-side comparison. But it's close enough to where you can see how much belly I had in the older video compared to now. And no, I'm not like what you see in a diet pill commercial where the before photo is of a really fat person and the after photo then shows them all ripped and lean. But that small difference that you see is 30 pounds gone. And my blood sugar is back down into the normal ranges. And that 30 pounds gone has me feeling so much better. I have so much less aches and pains and more energy. And the part about no exercise that was in the thumbnail of this video, that may have been a little bit of a lie. I do get exercise. I do a lot of gardening and I do spend a lot of time outside, but I don't jog or run and I don't hit the gym, which is the type of exercise that I was referring to. And the comment that I made that this video would probably upset the Canadian prepper, it's more of the clickbait thumbnail that I used that said no exercise that would probably get him shaking his head. But this video isn't about losing weight the easy way like so many scammers want to promise you if you give them money in exchange for their product. You know what I'm talking about, the guys that you see on videos or in commercials saying, hey, give me your money and I'm going to sell you a pill that will make you shed the weight and get you ripped and lean without any exercise or dieting. What this video is about showing you a simple way that you could start losing weight so that you can start getting your blood sugar levels back to normal, so that you can have less aches and pains, so that you start developing more energy and get up and move. But I think that somebody like the Canadian Prepper, who does have a lot of knowledge on health and exercise, but they will appreciate a video like this that gives people who are struggling with weight and health issues, but gives them ideas of how they can get back on the right track of being healthier instead of being sedentary on their couch as they eat potatoes and eat their McDonald's. I think that what happens with a lot of people is that they start eating these high carb foods, and then when they eat these high carb foods, then they become lethargic from that food, and then the combination of the foods and then being lethargic and not moving very much, then they gain weight. And then with that gain weight becomes more hunger, more urge to eat more of those high carb foods. So then they eat more of those foods and then they become even more lethargic, and then they gain more weight, and then it's just a vicious cycle until they're able to break it. And I also know that not every overweight person has type 2 diabetes. And I also know that there are thin people out there that also have type 2 diabetes. This video is how I believe that the majority of type 2 diabetics got themselves there, and how they can get themselves back out of it. And folks, I'm also not trying to pass myself off as some kind of a health or fitness guru. And I'm also not trying to tell you that my way of eating is the best or the only way of eating. I'm just trying to pass information to you that has worked great for me, so that you can take this information from me and then information from other sources and then make your own informed decision along with your doctor of what would be best for you. So let's now make this video a wealth of information for everybody that watches this video. Why don't you please comment below with your favorite weight loss tips, and also comment with your favorite healthy recipes. That way we all can help each other to become just a little bit healthier and just a little bit more physically ready for if SHTF happens. And to learn one option that preppers use to cook food off grid, a way to cook great tasting food without fire or gas, since you may not have access to these after SHTF, then click on the video that should be appearing on the top of the screen just about now to learn more about that. And to learn how you can double or triple or even more than that your food for after SHTF, then click on the video that should be appearing on the right side of the screen just about now. Anyways folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.